Hey, I'm EternalOpossum, and I have a new look now. Not only that, I also have a new office. It's our construction. Anyway, I should probably start the video. Ranking Hell's Kitchen winners. It's about damn time. It's a subject that pretty much everyone who's watched the show at least once has done before. And granted, nowadays it's more linear with top choices due to the Discord gaining more relevance. It hasn't stopped people from coming up with wildly different opinions on who the best winner is. That is why I'm not doing that. Yeah, if I did a whole best list, then there would be one chef who I'd have to put at number one, and then a whole plethora of chefs that would need to be followed after, even though they're honestly not my favorite. Otherwise, I'd be assassinated. Even more, it just results in a really predictable video in my mind that I honestly don't think I'd have a lot of fun doing. So that's why instead, I'm doing a list of my favorite winners rather than the best winners. With that, only comes a few notes. This, of course, is only counting the winners of the Americanized version of Hell's Kitchen. I don't have access to the other versions, and let's be honest, that's pretty much 38 seasons overall with 38 different winners. 21 is more than enough. Also, if this be my list of favorite winners rather than who I think the best winner is, expect me to get really opinionated. The way I'll be judging this list is by the storyline they go through, if they have any memorable moments, if they deserve to win the season at all, if they find rootable in any sense, essentially stuff that not a lot of people will care about, but I do because my brain works like putting a square peg in a round hole. I will try to throw at least some fact in to sort of justify some of the rankings, but at the end of the day, this list is pretty much 10% fact, 90% opinion. Anyway, let's start.
1.
Before I reveal who's at the bottom of the list and therefore my least favorite winner, I need to come clean. I don't actually hate any winners. I mean, yeah, there's winners I'm sort of not crazy about and winners I could care less about, but there's none I outright hate. Regardless, one of them has to be at the bottom. After quite a bit of deliberation, I decided to think worse than being unmemorable or dislikable is having no reason winning in the first place. The thing with Michelle is that I almost feel bad putting her at the bottom here. She was one of the very few chefs I felt some form of positive reaction towards on season 14, a season which I think is kinda overrated, don't at me. And the thing is, her storyline of going from good but weaker to the finalists to winning a return season isn't bad on paper. Hell, Michelle winning, I would argue, isn't a bad idea. Unfortunately, this win had to be in All-Stars. Some people tend to blame Michelle and say the season wouldn't have been so bad if she didn't win, which I understand considering there were more than a few times I felt she could have been eliminated really easily after a bad performance, with that charity service sticking out in her incident with the water ball. Like I mentioned, however, it was All-Stars, home of the questionable eliminations. She literally could have had a borderline perfect run, and I don't think it could have saved the season. It would be the equivalent of trying to polish a turd. What also doesn't help is that the very next season had a very similar storyline play out, where the chef went from good but weaker to the finalists to win a return season. And that was way better executed, except that Michelle's storyline here comes off as worse in comparison. Again, I don't entirely blame Michelle for her position here due to the eliminations being clearly out of her control, but considering I don't think she had any business winning the season in the first place, especially when Nick was right there, she kinda has to be here.
2.
So, when making this countdown, I was pretty much juggling between two chefs with a bomb spot on this list. And the reason is because I don't really think they're that deserving of being the actual winner compared to others in their respective seasons. However, what made Michelle worse in the end was that she was weaker than several more competent and far better chefs, while the next chef at the very least had few things going for them. Yeah, pretty much everyone and their mother had a feeling that Noah was never going to play Sai. Noah is often ranked as one of, or the absolute worst winner in the show's history. I mean, I don't hate Nona, much like every other winner, but yeah, she's pretty weak for a winner. Even to the extent that Ramsey's justification of her winning was her palate. I mean, sure, she had the best palate of the season, but unless having a great palate correlates to being a better chef than Jillian or Russell, then that's a pretty big stretch for justification. Speaking of Russell, one of the reasons why I ranked her above Michelle was at the very least Noah was the lesser evil compared to Russell. Even then, she ended up becoming the most annoying part of the returning winter service from season 11, a service that is one of my all-time favorites. The other reason as to why she isn't the worst is because she was very lucky to at least be Blackjacket material in season 8. Then again, it's season 8, so really the bar is around Melissa's height. Michelle, on the other hand, didn't feel like Blackjacket material at all throughout the season. Man, this whole section is just dedicated to explaining why Nona isn't the worst. We're getting horribly off topic. Anyway, to make a brief summary, Nona's this low because as much as I would prefer her winning over Russell, she still is a really weak winner who only won the season due to the weak cast that she's not really that much better than, and Ramsey for some reason not putting Jillian in the finals over her. Plus I didn't find her that likable, to be honest. Yeah, let's move on. So, thankfully, we're officially out of the worst winners, but that doesn't essentially mean I would go be all sunshine and rainbows from here on out. The reason is because now we're on to the winners that, while I think they deserved the victory, they were never really that likable to me. And why not start with the chef that may consider to be the most unlikable? Yep, we got another unpopular winner here. Ariel Malone makes a very good argument for being the show's most dislikable winner. To many, she's argument prone, she's hypocritical, she got the Mega Chad eliminated, and worst of all, she was the only friend to Jackie. I mean, hey, at least it's not Frank, but considering who Frank is, I don't think she would have had the chance. Anyway, do I dislike Ariel Malone? Well, as you could probably guess, no. See, here's the thing. Ariel Malone may be this low solely because she definitely has modes I'm not big on, but I wouldn't say she has the worst attitude, which again, her season contained Frank, Jackie, and Danny, so that's hard to pass. In fact, she seemed to be more mellow by the final 8, and usually whenever she gets to arguments, they were mostly instigated by the other chef. Plus, I gotta give her some credit for winning on one leg, although the show never focused on that, so I can't give her all the credit. Not like that, but again, I can easily see that Ariel Malone, which is thankfully not as much as a mouthful as I was expecting, did deserve her victory, which is more than I can say than the other two. Speaking of her victory, can I just talk about her winner reveal? Why is the music like that? It seems like even the music doesn't want to see her win. It pretty much chose the worst winner background track ever out of spite. It's not a knock against Ariel Malone, but it's something interesting to point out. But yeah, Ariel Malone is definitely not the most likable winner. For number 18, Wait, Neil, why are you barricading the door?
The script told me to do it.
Script told you to? Should I be worried? Okay then. Who's number 18? I should probably explain. Remember when I said earlier in the video when I said I need to put one chef at number 1, otherwise I'd be assassinated? Well, this is that chef. Megan is pretty much treated as Hell's Kitchen royalty, and pretty much anything negative about her results in you being clowned on more than TikTok influencers by sane people. Here's the thing, she has a reason to be loved. She's one of, if not the most dominant chef to step foot in Hell's Kitchen, I will admit that. Great challenges, great leadership, great service performance, and to a lot of people she's just really rootable. But that's the thing, rootable? I mean, huh? I'm sorry, but I don't see it. I do not see how she is rootable in any capacity. I know I mentioned there's no winners I hate, but Megan is pretty much the closest to hating a winner as I can get. Seriously, I found her ridiculously annoying, arrogant, and whiny throughout the entire season. Some call it brutal honesty, some call it justified after all the punishment she's done, but I just don't find her rootable or likable in the slightest. I'm sorry. The whole punishment thing is not an excuse either because John exists and he didn't even win. And Hard Journey? Hello? Yeah, I know having her this low is going to be controversial, and that's why I'm doing my favorite winners list rather than best winners, Because if I did, I have to put her at number 1, and that would be as much fun as Rabies. Really, the only reason she isn't at the bottom is because I could easily say she deserved her victory, which is probably going to be the nicest thing I can say about her, which is also going to be my plea for when I'm inevitably killed for putting Megan this low. That will be quick and painless. Anyway, I should probably move on. So, I'm going to start by saying that the next 6 picks I won't go into too much detail about, and the reason is because I don't really have a lot to say about them at the end of the day. And I think it's because for the most part, I can barely remember anything they did. Essentially, these are the winners that I could deal with, but they're just really inoffensive. And I think it would be fitting to start off with the winner who I think is the blandest in the series. What? Are you expecting someone else? Yeah, I know this is never a opinion I'll get flack for, but Ryan is a chef who never once struck me as particularly memorable. I know there's another chef coming up that some people would say is less memorable, but I think at the very least that chef had an unexpected victory. Ryan on the other hand was a frontrunner from the beginning, got screen time, and yet I can barely remember a single thing she did in the season. I'm sorry I'm not going into much detail about her, but what can I say about her when she's the blandest winner ever in my book? Hell, did you know she wasn't even given her head chef position? I didn't realize this until I looked it up. Seriously, she's that forgettable that people forget she didn't get the job. Yeah, Ryan is she's just really forgettable to me as a winner.
1.
Speaking of chefs who didn't get their job, were you expecting someone else? Yeah, this is another chef who I really don't have much to say about. Janelle's just a very okay winner in my book. She never really did anything that interesting. Hell, the most interesting thing about her is how she failed to even receive her prize. She failed a drug test. I'm going to assume she was on what the producers were wrong when they decided to make season 11. Not only that, that pretty much resulted in the person she was against in the finals being considered robbed, and the season as a whole being a waste of time. It's depressing the only chef who benefited from this season was the 3rd placer. Note to self, make a video talk about why season 11 sucks donkey ass. Again, I don't hate Janelle at all, it's just at the end of the day, she's still a bland as hell winner.
The chef whose door opens will become.
And speaking of winners who people thought should have lost, I think we're starting to gag at this point. Trent is pretty much in the same boat as Janelle, in that I don't really have a lot to say about him. I mean, okay, yeah, he got a bit cockier the latter half of the competition, but I feel what makes me prefer him over someone like Megan is at the very least he wasn't entirely insufferable the whole way through to me. Plus, him ending the streak was good too, but even then, that should have happened the season earlier. In the end, however, he's probably my least favorite of the male winners so far, but it's only because I just find him kinda bland.
On the count of 3, turn the handle.
And speaking of chefs who I find bland for a winner, were you? Oh wait, this is the actual chef that people say is the blandest winner in the series. Huh. Gag didn't last as long as I thought. Anyway, Holly, what to say about her? I think I should talk about why I don't really think she's the blandest winner in the series, and it's mainly because of her storyline, since it's one of the more unique ones in the series. We've had stories of chefs who are the best on a constantly punished team, chefs who fought through injuries, but Holly is the only chef whose storyline was the chef everyone didn't see coming. It's honestly a really unique storyline that I personally enjoy, and while yes, Hell's Kitchens have better storylines, Holly's story is so different to the others that it makes me enjoy her quite a bit more than the previous 3. On the other hand, yeah, the storyline does work against her, as outside of her showmance with Jay, there's really not much to talk about with her. She didn't really stand out until the Blackjack age when the J stuff started. I should also talk about that, and honestly, it's inoffensive. It's a bit abrupt, but it's way better than Andrew and Heather in season 16. At least this showmance didn't involve infidelity. Oh, and her being screwed out for a prize sucks. It really does. Anyway, that's all I can really say about her. She's got a cool storyline, but that's really about it. Let's move on.
Before, I'd like you to turn the handle. are you ready?
So, the gag is over. How can I segue into this next pick? Hmm. Fuck it, whatever. Corey's just fine. She was a good chef and leader and had good moments like telling Jordan not to relapse, and she had bad moments where she had trouble taking responsibility and not having Amber on her team in the finale, which pretty much cost her the #1 spot. Yeah, I know you're sick of hearing this, but I'm sorry, there's just a lot of winners I don't really have a lot to say about. Corey's just another one of those winners that kind of came and went to me, and thus I don't really have anything interesting to point out with her. She's just kind of at the end of the day, and I think it's one of the reasons why I don't really enjoy season 19 as much as others do. Just 2 more okay chefs to go. Let's get this over with.
Christina and Justin, are you ready?
Alright, next up, Neil, why metal welding?
Once again, the script told me to.
Dude, there's no way it's gonna be that bad. Keep welding it! Okay, yeah, another pretty unpopular opinion, as Latasha is also regarded as a pretty likable winner. And I mean, yeah, she's likable, alright. Okay, I'm actually going to try and go into depth with Latasha. Latasha was very energetic, positive, ambitious, and was hilarious with a very well-endowed sense of humor. However, she was also very calm in the kitchen, kept herself well composed, and never followed her teammates for her poor performances, and was always looking to improve herself and others. Despite a rough start with a terrible signature dish, she quickly improved, became one of the most... I'm sorry, I just can't say anything really that noble about her, just like the scene she appeared in. I'm really struggling here. She was a nice chef who was also great in the kitchen, but I never really found her that interesting. I promise, there's just one more chef who I don't really have much to say about, and I'll finally be able to go into more detail then. Let's just move on. Alright, last chef who I don't really have much to say about. Here we go. So, yeah, it's Rock, alright. Without doubt one of the more well-known winners, Rock is someone who sort of splits the difference between a chef people expect out early and chefs people expect to go all the way. What I mean by that is that despite a few hiccups such as his signature dish, he always had this gravitas and aura of a winner around him. It helped he was without doubt the best chef on his team. Yeah, he has bad moments, but more often than not he made up for them quickly, so any bad auras didn't stay for long. He came in as a leader, and he left as a leader, and it's why he's number 11. Thank fuck. Now I can actually talk about winners in more detail. Let's go.
Will become the winner of Hell's Kitchen and the head chef's position.
Hey Neil, is that door still barricaded?
Why do you ask?
Well... Okay, here's the thing about Christina Wilson. I think that she's a phenomenal sous chef, probably my favorite of the series. In fact, she's pretty much the best thing about season 15 to me, a season that I really don't like. And if I ranked her solely based on her time as a sous chef, then she'd probably be in the top 5. With that comes problems, however, as not only is she, along with another chef I'll talk about, the only 2 sous chefs who were previous winners, but she's pretty much made the most appearances for a winner. That kind of puts her at an unfair advantage in my mind. So what I'm essentially doing is ranking her more based on her time as a contestant, rather than a sous chef. And what do I think of her as a contestant? She's okay. Admittedly, the sous chef part is a little bit of the reason why she's a bit higher over some of the others, because we got to see a bit more of her leadership in action. But I think for the most part, when I watched her in season 10, I just felt really... Like, she was my favorite chef on the red team that season, but at the end of the day, I still don't really remember much of what she did on that show. Seriously, try to think of something Christina Wilson did that isn't sous chef related. And no, winning does not count. In the end, while I adore sous chef Christina, I don't love Hell's Kitchen competitor Christina.
The
Now at this point, you're probably gonna notice that my true favorites are usually gonna be chefs that I felt had more memorable moments or were a massive bright spot in an otherwise bad season. Well, we're finally here to the chefs that are among my all-time favorite winners. And there's only 9 of them. Man, I have high standards for a talentless loser on the internet who masquerades as an opossum. Anyway, time to talk about my first favorite. Or my 9th favorite. Before you ask, this has nothing to do with Over the Fucking Hedge. While there's another chef come out that I prefer more than Heather, she is the first winner that I really root for all throughout the season. Then again, there was no one really else who could compare. I mean, there was Keith, but Keith did have his attitude problems, so yeah. And yet, that isn't a bad thing at all, as Heather alone is one of the best parts of Season 2. In fact, I even go as far as to say that Heather is the first truly deserving winner. And yes, that is even after I mentioned there is one chef that came before her that I prefer. She's a hard worker, she doesn't give up, she emerges as a leader on whatever team she's on, and not only that, she also has one of my all-time favorite reactions to winning. Although, the lights kinda make it hard to watch. However, one of the reasons why she isn't any higher is because I think Season 6, which I love by the way, kinda doesn't use her that well. I kinda wish she got a bit more screen time. Aside from that, I think Heather is a very deserving winner, and the first chef that took me one view to say, yep, you're one of my favorites.
The chef whose door opens.
So, I'm going to be completely honest,
Hey,
Neil, I'm in the middle of something, and you know that we don't use my name here.
sorry, but considering that I had to go out there and get pelted with tomatoes by the mob you attracted, I've decided that I don't want to have this happen again.
Wait, you're quitting on your first day?
No, I'm not. Even though I'm tempted because you severely underpay me, what I've actually decided to do is hire a community representative.
Oh, they're here now.
3 things. First, where's the barricade? Second, where's the mob that clearly didn't just shoot you? Third of all, wow, the replacement is really small. Jesus, you're actually really big.
Yeah, I am. How do you think I got rid of the mob outside? Hey, don't worry. They're not dead. They're just taking a nap. That's all.
On fire?
Yeah.
But I thought you were a representative.
Yeah, I am, but I'm pretty much here to protect you, and needless to say, I think I arrived just in time.
Why's that? So, remember I mentioned that my favorite winners could come from seasons I don't think are great? Well, this is probably the best example. Yeah, I'll say it, Paul is great, and I'm tired of hearing otherwise. Much like Ariel Malone, Paul is also ranked as one of the show's least popular winners, mainly for 2 reasons. His future appearances, and him being seen as weaker than the guy who was guessed in the finals and Will. However, before I go into that, I'm going to talk about why I love Paul for reasons that don't involve what I just mentioned. Season 9, I know, is not a very popular season solely because of Elise, and I mean, yeah, I can understand that. However, when I watched the season for the first time, my immediate thought upon vision wasn't Elise sucks, although she does, but rather, holy crap, I love this blue team, and Paul is one of the reasons why. His overall friendly nature and his friendship with Will, Tommy, and Natalie is just so charming and wholesome that it honestly makes this stuff with Elise nowhere near as bad as I was expecting. Don't get me wrong, I don't like the Elise stuff, but considering not long after we get to see Paul and the blue team interact, it's just a really well needed palate cleanser. It helps that Paul is great on his own. Seriously, Paul has had so many moments that did nothing but endear me to him throughout season 9. There's his waltz with Will, the limousine incident, him being happy that Natalie's on the blue team, and of course, the greatest plea in Hell's Kitchen history. And I'm actually serious, that is the greatest plea of all time. Anyone who thinks otherwise is, dude, what's the nicest way I could call someone an idiot?
Oh, I think the best word to describe an idiot in the nicest way would be dunted head, I guess. I don't know, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I just remembered you're still here.
Thank you for remembering.
So, what are your thoughts on Paul?
I actually think Paul is an underdog if you ask me. Even though he won the season, people still think he is in Will Shadow, despite the fact that he doesn't disappoint when it comes to the kitchen. Sure, he had that one service, but he proved himself regardless, and his finale was one of the strongest in the show's history.
I think I already like you, man. Speaking of the finale, one of the reasons Paul gets a bad rep is because of him beating the superior Will. And I mean, yeah, that sucks, but Paul's performance was super impressive. And as much as I love Will, he kind of was hoisted by his own petard grabbing Krupa. As for the other reason he's not liked in that his future appearances didn't show him in the best light, yeah, I get that, but honestly, the only time it bothered me the slightest was in Season 12. Season 11's All Winners host was just too good for me to be annoyed by him. So yeah, despite Paul being one of the least popular winners, is actually one of my favorite winners.
Count of 3. You'll turn your handles.
Dude, what the hell? Why are you now 3D?
Limitations.
Huh?
You'll see. Anyways, I have a question for you, and it's with the lights.
What do you mean?
Why do the lights dim so much in certain ways?
It turns out the building I bought's electricity comes from movement, so for example, when I do this, it turns on. But when it's just no light.
Are you planning on fixing that?
Yeah, of course, but that's not what we're about to talk about. On to number 7. Now, for those who may or may not remember, I had previously talked about Danny in my top 10 favorite chefs from seasons 1 through 9, and by that logic, I shouldn't really go into depth about him. But I still am for 2 reasons. 1, I actually really like Danny as a winner and want to do right by him. And 2, the original video is blocked and outdated, so that essentially gives me an excuse to talk about him all over again. When looking at Danny, he's another chef that one would expect to be cocky, arrogant, but ultimately not a great chef, sort of like Scott from season 7. However, Danny is not that. Yeah, he's a loud, proud redneck from the appendix of the United States and Florida, but he backs up his boasting extremely well. What also helps him is his story, which is one of the better ones, so we see him slowly form genuine bonds with some of the other louder and just as arrogant chefs like Ben and Robert, while at the same time toning down his arrogance and let his own cooking speak for him. What also helps us is his finale against Paulo, which I would consider to be the very first real nail-biter in the series, in that they're both so close in skill level to each other that it was really anyone's game. Danny's a chef who completely subverts the classic all-talk chef and proves that he's all that and your average Floridian headline. Wait a minute, huh?
I gotta go.
Huh? What do you mean? What's going on?
Just finish your countdown. Trust me, as long as you don't have any unpopular opinions anymore, things will be fine.
I have to pay for that, you know! Let's just move on.
On the count of 3.
I think it's clear by this point that I'm pretty heavily biased towards the older seasons as opposed to the newer ones, and I think it's because the older ones hit way more notes for me than a lot of the more modern seasons do. Sure, there's some gems, but more often than not, I think some of the reason for that is because of the winner. Like, I know they have to be strong chefs to win, but to me, that's not exactly enough. I'm not asking them to be loud and funny, or be generally nice, or change the game, or oh, would you look at that? Honestly, I think Michael was probably the hardest to rank on this list, as, looking back, I don't really think Michael is that good of a winner compared to others. He wasn't an effective leader in his final service, his competition was pretty weak, and I don't think he would have won the season nowadays. Hell, originally he didn't even make the top 10 on this list, but upon rewatching his season a few times, I knew I had to put him high. Michael is genuinely one of a kind, as he is probably one of the most impressive winners to ever compete in the series. And I know I just say he wasn't that good of a winner, but just bear with me. In his season, he won 5 of the 6 team services he was in, and in the one service he lost, he was named the best of the worst, which effectively resulted in him being guaranteed a black jacket by the end of the day. No chef has had a record that impressive to this day. Not only that, Michael's not only the first person to use the cutthroat tactic to eliminate stronger competition, but he's the only one who did it successfully and won. This is a strategy that many have tried to do and failed spectacularly in, And the only other person who I can really think of who managed to barely replicate this tactic was Corey, and even then her nomination was seen as complete bogus. Honestly, I think Michael is perhaps the most dangerous winner in the entire series, as he will wait for the moment where you mess up particularly bad and then make sure you go home. With his tactic, I do believe he'd probably be able to get rid of even more talented chefs. Oh yeah, and he created the pass sabotage, which pretty much made every run in the pass segment way more enjoyable to watch. Seriously, could you imagine if it was just leading and no sabotages? Passing would be really boring in my mind, and Michael's actions makes him probably the most influential chef in the show's history, and he did that all by essentially breaking the season. He pretty much came in, broke it, and left like the average father. Michael was someone who took advantage of the fact this season was in its infancy, and used all that to his advantage brilliantly. His tactic is a tactic that I truly believe can never, ever be replicated again.
I want you to turn the handle. 1.
Okay, what I said about the modern seasons is a bit harsh. Do I like them as much as the older ones? No, but again, I do think there's gems. There's 3 other winners from the more modern seasons I haven't mentioned yet, so why not get the first one out of the way? The most recent winner by the time this video comes out, Alex is a chef who made a really big step to being one of my favorites. However, it's not entirely what you expect what I like about him that put him so high. It's not that he's a great chef, in fact, great chef is an understatement, but it's that he's a jack of all trades in a way. Pretty much what makes a chef likable to me is if they can be entertaining in a good way, like emotional, funny, heartwarming, that sort of thing. And Alex pretty much clears all those categories. Not only that, the dude's just really pleasant, to the extent that even the 20-somethings like him. He's probably the most likable winner in the show's history. However, why is he only number 5 if I just said he's the most likable winner in the show's history? Well, it's for 2 reasons, and both are storyline related. First, his storyline with AP has the worst conclusion ever with them just making up off screen, and that pretty much spells the end for any conflict with Alex, as he's the only one to get along with the 20-somethings. The other reason is the storyline surrounding his win. Like, I think it is a pretty interesting storyline of him being the sole 40-something in Black Jackets, but I think that storyline resulted in a lot, and I mean a lot, of unneeded casualties. I know it's kind of unfair, considering this is more on the producer side of things, rather than Alex himself, but considering this is impacting Alex's storyline, it's something I can't ignore. So he'll have to settle for being one of my favorites instead of easily my favorite.
Will become the executive chef of the flagship Hell's Kitchen restaurant at Caesar's Palace.
Earlier in this video, I mentioned that Rock was one of those chefs that could split the difference between a potential winner and an early boot. Well, it turns out that was not even an extreme case considering who he had to go up against. This chef, on the other hand, this is the best example. One of the most underestimated chefs in the show's history, Scott is easily one of those chefs that people didn't expect to win. However, unlike someone like Holly, where her storyline was the chef that everyone forgot about, Scott's story was the chef that people counted out. He was relatively considered one of the weaklings due to being very hit or miss in both challenges and services, and people highly doubted he would make it to the Black Jackets. That wasn't until he got switched to the Red Team, and opinions began to shift. Throughout his time on the Red Team, Scott not only had started to improve, but he was constantly put down as a weak link by Anton, Keisha, and especially Joy. Anton had started his Never My Fault routine, which will obviously endear you to many, while Scott was used as a scapegoat by Keisha and Joy to keep Keisha in. Joy especially happened to have a hate motive towards Scott, even when Scott was one of the most pleasant chefs of the season, even comforting her when she worried about a dish she put up. At the very least, Keisha worked her ass off for Scott in the finale. Oh yeah, speaking of which, one of the reasons why Scott is this high up is because of his final 2 services. While Scott was very hit or miss when cooking on the line, the man pretty much runs away from the competition when put in a leadership role. Seriously, look at his past and his finale, and he essentially curb stops the competition. Also, I'm just going to say this without any hint of sarcasm, no joking, all seriousness. Scott is fucking gorgeous. Seriously, the man was 36 through the season, and he looks better than your average influencer. However, what kind of keeps Scott from getting further is that it admittedly took me a while for me to get invested in him, more specifically around the time he was switched to the Red Team, and even then for a while I was still more invested in Jason and Rochelle. However, I can't deny that Scott deserved his win, and cemented himself as one of the biggest underdogs in Hell's Kitchen history.
On the count of 3, turn your handles.
In reality TV shows, there are roles that are filled to create storylines, and Hell's Kitchen is no exception. There's the normal chefs, the comic relief chefs, the jerks, sometimes with heart of gold, but personally the roles I'm most interested in are the underdogs. They have the hardest road compared to everyone else, they're put up for elimination a lot, they're beaten down a lot, and even then they're not guaranteed to win in the end. But sometimes that underdog can pull off the victory, and that usually results in one of the most satisfying payoffs you'll see. Sure, I mentioned Scott earlier, but there's one chef who's an underdog I prefer just a little bit more. Yeah, I like Christina McElmore more than Wilson, I'll say it. I've kind of talked about Christina McElmore a bit in one of my older videos where I talked about her rivalry with Corey whilst eating my own microphone, and since I do want to remake that video at some point so that I'm not eating my own microphone, I'll keep it as brief as I can. One of the reasons why she's this high is because I feel like Christina had the best told single season story in the show's history with her Corey rivalry. And unless I get a season with a storyline that feels like Vince Gilligan was in charge, that probably won't change anytime soon. Seriously, the storyline has themes, deep dynamics, character development. Seriously, was I watching Hell's Kitchen or Breaking Bad? Talking about Christina herself, I think she has a really underrated personality. Like, she has so many opportunities to be petty because the team kept putting her up for relatively minor mistakes, but no, she stays mature, refuses to play their games, and overall establishes herself as wise beyond her years. Hell, I was so invested in Christina and her storyline that I actually don't mind that she beat out Petrosa, who, if you remember, is one of my favorite competitors of all time. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that if Christina didn't win, then the storyline wouldn't be perfect. It'd be the equivalent of the average Vince McMahon booking storyline. Okay, that's a bit harsh. You get what I mean though. I don't think the storyline would be anywhere near as good if Petrosa won. So yeah, Christina McElmore is the first true underdog in the series, but she's not my favorite. There may be 2 more to go, but Christina McElmore is still one of my favorites.
On the count of 3, turn your handle.
Wow, I can't believe we're at the final 2. And that pretty much means the next pick will pretty much shatter all suspense for who my favorite winner is. That also means you've been paying attention that my 2 favorite winners cover the same season. Yeah, I'm biased as hell, and no, I don't really care. Okay, maybe I care a little. Anyway, number 2, let's go! Now, like stated before, I had previously talked about Ariel Fox in my top 10 favorite chefs from seasons 1 through 9, and looking back on it, while I do feel like it's fair to talk about her again since the video isn't available anymore, looking back, I don't think I went into nearly enough depth on why I appreciate her so much. To start out, remember when I talked about the show how I mentioned there was a chef who pretty much had the exact same storyline as her, where they went from good but weaker than the finalists to winning a return season, but it was better executed? Well, Ariel is that chef. This is Michelle's story done right. Now, I will admit in season 6 I never found myself that invested in her, mainly because the other louder personalities overshadowed her. Hell, even when she got more focus in the Black Jacket, she still was the least interesting to me. So it certainly came as a surprise when she returned a Rookies vs. Veterans. Granted, Rookies vs. Veterans returning cast was a bit questionable upon first reveal, but if there's one thing I'll always appreciate, is returning chefs, and Ariel is no exception. Throughout the season, many fans worried that the talented but incredibly divisive Mia would win the season, due to the amount of focus on her compared to everyone else. It appeared that no one could really compete with her. She was the challenge queen and was totally a beast in services, or at least that's what the producers wanted you to think. However, as the season progressed, one chef that people counted out early started to get more focus. They began emerging as a leader, hitting marks that Mia couldn't, even outperforming her on occasion. That chef was Ariel, and the moment she was declared the finalist, people realized how much she had grown. She went from a solid, if bland competitor who was overshadowed by 2 way stronger finalists to one of the most dominant chefs in the show's history. Ariel has the best slow burn journey in Hell's Kitchen. And this is where I look at Michelle's storyline, laugh at it before crying at how butchered it was, then watch season 18 to show that this is how it's done. And yet, we still have one chef to go. I wonder who it could be.
One, two, three.
Do I even need to say it? I mean, what the hell else can I say about Dave? Pretty much everything knowable to say about him has been said before. He managed to make a dish with figs incredibly good. He won a foreign cuisine challenge by using an outlaw dish. He won over Kevin, a chef that may consider to be one of the best to never win. He actually made Suzanne tolerable for a while. And yet, I feel like there's one thing I'm missing. Something that endeared him to the fans. Something that made him icon, probably more than every other chef. Something that pretty much immediately draws you to him in the first place. Oh, he broke his arm and won the entire damn competition. Okay, in all seriousness, yes, I know I talked about him before. Yes, I am aware this isn't exactly the original opinion. Just like how Jason Underwood is a sexist beanbag also isn't an original opinion. It's actually a fact. Yes, I'm aware that according to some people, Dave is way too high. But once again, this is my favorite chefs, not who I think the best chef is. And even then, I genuinely think that Dave is the most iconic chef to ever step foot in Hell's Kitchen. I'm actually saying that in complete seriousness. Like if you heard just by overhearing someone at a party something like, hey, did you know about the guy who won Hell's Kitchen after breaking their arm? You'd probably want to go and watch that. And I guarantee you'd be impressed watching Dave do 2 sections with one arm perfectly. And you automatically root for him just due to how much of a badass he is. Dave is the Hell's Kitchen compare that many should strive to be. A chef who never gives up no matter how much pain and punishment they go through, despite everything telling them to quit, telling them that no one will blame them, telling them to fight another day. But despite all of that, they don't quit. They keep on fighting until their body gives out, they go home, or they win. That is Dave, and that's why he's number 1. So that's my countdown. Be sure to like, comment, and...
Dude, what the hell did you do?
What? Neil, what are you talking about?
Did you not hear the rumblings that's been going on? You know, the ones that scared off Corny?
That's his name? Never asked it.
That's besides the point. Those rumblings led to something.
A bowel movement.
Just get outside.
What the hell? What is that?
Run! It's the Dragon of Bad Takes!
I just made a slightly questionable countdown!